Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome everybody to Positive Talk. My name is, of course, as you probably know by now, Kevin McDonald, and I've got a great guest for you today. And this guest is perfectly aligned with what I like to talk about and what the show is about, because it's about your life and it's about making your life as good as it can be. And there's some certain things that would be helpful to know. And she is one of those people who can help us. First of all, she is a mom. She is a grandma. She is an author. She is a podcast host. She is a entrepreneur, and she does all kinds of things for the betterment of the planet, for the betterment of mankind. And it is my pleasure to have Cathlene Miller. No, it's
Miner,
Cathlene Miner here. I knew that. It's great to have you here, Cathlene.
Thank you. It is awesome to be here. I always love to hear your voice because I know that I'm always going to feel better after I listen to whatever you and anybody else you're talking to has to say.
I have to say this because it's right here on your website, by the way. If you want to go to CathleneMiner.com, you can find out all about her and the handbags and what she does and a bunch of different stuff. But one of the things that you say here that is, in the beginning that I say, know your greatness, because I believe that we were born great. And you say you have a little bit different take on it, but it really is the same thing, which is your self-perception is the base of everything in your life. It's directly connected to your confidence and well-being. Your self-perception will dictate the chances you take, the choices you make. Hey, that's a song right there. And the relationships you stay in, the ones you leave, because you are limitless and deserve the best. We all do. And you're right. Where did you come up with that?
For me personally, it started when I was younger. I was married young, got pregnant young, got a divorce young. So I was starting to realize that, the things I was concentrating on my life were starting to change, whether it would be good or not so good. And then the one thing I really struggled with was feeling good about myself. For whatever reason, I could not get that going. I had a great job and I knew I was going to work my way up the ladder. So I was focused on that and it was going great. My kids were doing great. I mean, even though barely had any money left at the end of the week because I was supporting 2 kids by myself, things were still going okay, but I didn't feel good about myself. So I started to realize that what I think and feel about myself is really what matters, because I was taking what the outside world was thinking of me, at least what I thought they were thinking of me, which usually, by the way, is not the truth, right? We usually think somebody's thinking something about us and it's really not even what they're thinking. And if it is, it doesn't matter anyway. So that's really when I started working on my own self-perception. At the time, I had a second job as I had a full-time job, but then I started personal training women to make extra money because I wanted to belong to a gym, didn't have money to go to a gym. So that's what I did. And I started working with my clients on the same thing because it was helping me too. And that's really how all that was born, was yourself. And then I started realizing, actually, what I think about myself is exactly what you just read, dictating the chances that I was taking, the choices I was making, the relationships I was staying in, and the ones that I was leaving. Because I was like, you know what? I'm better than this. I deserve to be treated better than this. And that was both personal and professional. So it's not just about our personal lives. It has to do with everything around us. Because think about it, even confidence. What I think about myself is going to dictate whether or not I take that chance or make that phone call. Anything.
Well, and you're right. Confidence is a huge component because we keep getting told, "Oh, you're not that good," or "You're not that smart," or "You're
Mhm.
too fat," or "You're too skinny," or "You're too this," or "You're too that," and we tend to lose confidence in who we really are, and needlessly so, because we are better than what other people think of us to be, because they have their own agenda.
And we're all born amazing. Exactly what you said at the beginning. Like, we're all born here for a reason, and we start out amazing, but we let the outside world kind of just push us down little by little by little till we look around and we're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And yeah, I guess what they're saying is true.
And it doesn't make any sense that we do that. Why do you think we do that to ourselves?
I don't know that we do it on purpose. I just think that's the way our brain is, right? It just takes this on and that on. And that's why, we always hear people talk about, oh, you've got to work on your mindset. Now, I really think that's a pretty broad term, though. But you do have to work on what you think about yourself. And even with the book that I wrote, I do my own book every 6 months because I know it takes about 6 months for that outside world to start piling on again. And then you start thinking about things like that. I mean, like I said, I got pregnant at a very young age, so I started working, and there was a time in my life that I thought, gosh, like, because I had started to go to college, but it just wasn't working. I mean, I can't work full time, work a job on the weekends, after work, raise two kids, and go to school. So something had to go, and I used to think, gosh, I'm just not as smart as some of these other people. And so I really did think things that probably nobody else thought, but I was comparing myself to other people. And I think we just do that because we look at the outside world and we're like, well, gosh, they accomplished all that. But then we forget to look at it, like, back at ourselves.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, I was started to realize, okay, wait a minute. I've got two kids. I'm raising them by myself. I'm working all of the time. I mean, I'm making it work and I'm actually pretty happy. So why does it me? Like, why am I thinking that these people are better than I am? We're just in a different place.
Exactly. And first of all, I would like to congratulate you. I cannot for the life of me imagine. I don't think I could do it. I could not raise 2 children by myself, work full time, keep the family together, keep the house together, keep everybody fed, for heaven's sakes.
And
And
some days, you know what? When all that happened, everybody was still moving. They were fed. They were clean. It was a good day. Like, I was accomplished. And it's crazy because I look back now and I'm like, you know what? Like, I really do feel too for other people that are in that position because I know what it's like. And when you're in it, you're in it. And those little things matter. Those little things, like, okay, you know what? Tonight we're having cereal for dinner. We actually did that a lot. And it's good. Everybody loved it. I mean, what a joy, right? Do you know how much the kids love that? I'd take them to here we have Publix, right? Because I'm in Florida. We'd take them there. I would take them there and they would be able to pick out their own cereal. Like, it was like a party. So we did fine.
well, and that's how you have to make it when you are, trying to make everything work, and it's something that's gotta be easier than
Yeah.
others and stuff. So, what was your favorite cereal?
Oh my, but the little Fruit Loops? Fruit
Oh,
Loops were one
yes.
of their favorites. But at that point in my life, I couldn't afford real Fruit Loops. So we always got the bags.
Sure.
But my kid, they didn't care. They didn't care.
They
And
didn't know any different.
no, they really didn't. And it's so I look back now, and this kind of is beside the thing, but it actually makes you realize that your kids think about things and things mean something to them that you never would think that they did. So what I'm going to say, so our oldest is 32. Okay. So, and he's married. I've got my kids range from the ages of 32 to 18, and I have four of them. And I was at his house, he's successful, nice house, all of the things that you'd want for your kids. And he's like, Mom, I'm going to go out and cook stuff on the grill. Why don't you make the potatoes? And I'm looking around for potatoes. And he's like, it's in the cabinet. And I bring out this box, and it's those potato flakes. And I was like, this? He's like, yeah, and that's my favorite. And honestly, I think at that moment, like I started getting tears in my eyes because I was like, oh my gosh. He said, don't you remember those? They've always been my favorite. And I used to buy those because I didn't have enough money to buy regular potatoes or time to do that stuff. So we would just mix it with water and I'd stick some peas in there and we would have mashed potatoes. So, but he's like, Mom, I remember that. And they are like the best thing ever. And the thing is as the mom at the point that time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having to feed my kid like these little potato flakes, like, you know. So the kids don't really care as long as they have a parent that's there and cares. That's really all that matters. So your original question is why? When did I start to think about it? That's really when I started working on my self-perception because I was like, I've got to set a good example for my kids. I have to feel better about myself. Like there's only two ways to go here. Either I feel bad about myself or I start to feel better. And I've got to figure out a way to do that.
Just as an aside, you made me remember my youth when I was a kid. There used to be something, and they still have them today, I think. Swanson TV dinners,
Oh yeah, we had those when I was little.
and they came in the tin. And now they
Mm-hmm.
come in the plastic because you can microwave them. But in the olden days, you would put them in the oven,
Yes.
and they came in a tin, like aluminum foil tin
Yes.
thing, and you take the top off and you put them in. My brother and I, because my mother was real frugal and they didn't have a lot, she would split them. So,
Oh, see, I only got
yeah,
half a brownie.
yes, and but what we would fight over is who got their half in the tin. That was the cool part.
And that really meant something to you, though. That was a
It
big
did.
deal.
It was because if I got the 10, I was in control. I don't know what I was thinking. It was much cooler to have the 10 because a lot of times I had this little plate and had this little drumstick and a little dab of potatoes and little vegetable and half a brownie. You're right.
You remember the brownies? I thought
Oh
the
yeah.
brownies in those Swanson frozen meals were amazing. The thing I remember about those, because we always had those in the freezer when I was growing up, was that, and still to this day, it's the same thing for me. Like I have to use a plastic fork because I can't use metal on metal, hurts my teeth. So like, and that's what I used to, I can't eat it with this, but I do totally, that's how I remember that foil plate, was that I had to have something plastic to stick it in my mouth.
Well, so it's amazing. The kids, they are so pure
Yeah.
when they are little, and they get it, and they appreciate the simple things. And then we get older and we lose appreciation because Johnny or Joni has more and has got this stuff and that, and then and we feel less than. We feel like we're not worth it, and that's we really got to change that.
We do. And, you know, as I've gotten older, and I like to say wiser, and I say that because I know a lot more than I did yesterday and the day before, because every day I'm learning from other people, which is amazing. But, you know, after being a single mom, I did meet this amazing man, got married, had two more kids, became a stay-at-home mom, was a stay-at-home mom for over 20 years. And so I've got all kinds of stories with that and positivity. But the thing I'm getting at is, you know, as a kid, because we were all kids before, we were pure. We do all have that inside of us where we have that positive attitude, and we can look at the glass half full, right? Like kids when they're getting up and walking, they don't fall down and go, oh gosh, who's looking at me? I'm not doing that again. No, they get back up and they go and they fall back down again. But as parents, or as a parent, or whether you're single or married, what I noticed was that when I was barely making ends meet, which was the truth, and holiday would roll around, I would try to get my kids everything they ever wanted, right? I don't know whether I thought that was going to make, I don't know. I really don't know what the reason was, except for the fact I felt like, oh, my kids are going to like be without if I don't get them everything they want. And then as I got older and, as I say, wiser, and was financially stable, my kids didn't get as much because I started to realize that does not matter. Those material things don't matter. The fact that we're there and present and actually having a conversation or being on their level, that's what they want.
Absolutely. And that takes sometimes, by the way, I want to congratulate you because a lot of times, and I'd love to talk about this if you're
Uh-huh.
willing and able, is a lot of times when somebody gets married and they get married young, and that particular relationship, whatever, just didn't work out. And it was because of two different people.
Yeah,
A lot of times we go into the second relationship just like the first relationship, but you were able to not do that and to actually find a really good dude that you were able to then spend a lot of time with and stuff. Do you think that you made a fundamental shift in who you were and what you perceived at that time, which allowed you to break out of that box that you had put yourself in?
exactly. And I believe 100% it had to do with the fact that I had a healthy self-perception. I really paid attention to what I thought and felt about myself, not what anybody else thought and felt about me. So in saying that, it means that I knew how I wanted to feel in a relationship. I knew how I wanted to be treated in a relationship. And that made all the difference. So yes, I was shifted from one to the other. The other thing is I knew what I did not want in a relationship because I already did that. And not saying that it's a bad person. It's just saying that, sometimes people just aren't good together. They're just not. I
Mhm.
mean, they've got different values, different responsibilities, different ethics, different work ethics. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a relationship. But yeah, I certainly believe that I had changed. I changed. I wasn't going to just settle anymore. And it's interesting, and I still remember this conversation to this day. I've always been very close to my parents. And I had a conversation with my dad one day, and I met him at work early in the morning, sitting in the parking lot. And he said, "What is it that you really want out of a relationship?" And at this point, I was kind of early on, still very young. And I said, "I just want to feel content." And he said, "You deserve a lot more than contentment." And at that point, it just hit me like, we do deserve more than that in a relationship. It should bring you joy. It should make you happy. The person should bring out the best in you, not just, it's all right, because it's our life. It's our life.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think about this from time to time that in the course of your life, I don't know how many people you've met, when you were younger,
Yeah.
and how many people that you were exposed to, or how many men that you were exposed to. But the number isn't very big. When you look at the number of people that are on the planet, it's a really small
Mhm.
sample size of the type of people that you got to know. And when you're single and you got a couple of kids, it's real easy to take that sample size and to pick the best out of that lot that may not be very good.
That's because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, it's better than what I've
Exactly.
seen here." We deal with that a lot in the nonprofit that I have. Yeah. Yeah.
And let's mention the nonprofit real quick while we're there.
hmm Well, it's called Hopefull Handbags Global. We help domestic abuse survivors and their children get to safety, wellness, long-term sustainability, and relationships, of course, are all part of that. And that's why the base of what we work on in all of our programs within the nonprofit is self-perception. And what's amazing? Now that because I started this in 2017 and I have years to look back on, everybody that has gone through those programs and truly have a healthy self-perception are not making those same choices in relationships. Makes
And
a huge difference.
isn't it kind of the fact that not only do they not make those same bad choices, those choices don't even enter their head anymore.
Exactly. And the red flag goes up quick, even if they're just talking to somebody without even an indication that they would want a relationship, just in a regular friendship. They're like, they can pick up on the things quicker. They can pick up on the flags quicker.
And rather than say, this is the best of the available lot that I have, and I'm tired of being single, you
Yeah.
hold on and you go to search for the right person, and knowing that, as you also talk about on your website, that once you have your self perception is good and things are moving in the right direction, the right guy will come along.
Okay, absolutely 100%. And I know that because that's what has happened to me. That's what's happened to so many other people that I've worked with, because we're just in a different mind frame, right? And I truly believe that when we're joyful or we're happy, we're putting out those vibes, right? So the person that comes to talk to us or that passes us on the street and we smile at them, they're going to smile back at us because like, ooh, wait, I just felt that. And so that's the same thing with relationships, whether it's personal, professional, romantic, or just platonic. I mean, you're getting those people that are starting to surround you instead of the people that are toxic to you. We don't really want them really close.
And you end up pushing away because they're toxic and they've got lower vibration. We're going to talk about energy and vibration in relationships and how it kind of all works when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking with Cathlene Miner, and you can go to her website, which is cathleneminer.com. Hey, that's easy. Even I can do that. So we'll be right back. Stay right with us.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. That was quick, wasn't it? That was easy. And it's, some of these PSAs that I run during the show, they really have got a great message. And that is a great message.
That was a great message and 100% true.
Exactly. And if you can be, anybody can be a father. I know how it works. It ain't that tough, but it's tough to be a dad.
It is. It is. And I really give credit to those dads that are out there that I think sometimes they don't get enough credit. And I say this because when I was a stay-at-home mom for over 20 years, my husband was going to work every day. And it's easy to get in the thought process when you're staying home all day. I mean, you're not really home eating bonbons, I promise you, with 4 kids and running them everywhere. And plus I homeschooled the 2 younger kids. So seriously, like I was full on. But sometimes you start to think, gosh, they get to leave the house and they're doing this and they're doing, you know what I mean? Because they're actually leaving. But the amount of stressors that dads have too, whether they're in a family where both parents are working or they're just the ones working. Sometimes I don't think they get enough credit of all the stressors that are on their shoulders as well. So I just want to throw that out there. I know some amazing dads, my dad included, my husband's dad. I mean, they care so much about their families, and a lot of it does have to do with them working so they can provide for them.
One of these days we're going to have to talk about this. The concept is called the golden handcuffs. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Golden handcuffs means that you're handcuffed to the job, but there's so much money involved in it that you can't do anything else to make that kind of money. And so you now have to do that job, even though you feel like you're handcuffed to it and you're not happy with it. But that's part of, what happens to a lot of guys is that they make enough money doing something that they used to like it. Now they don't like it so much, but they can't leave and go start all over again, start their own business, any of that kind of stuff. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the differences between when your self-perception is high. I believe that your vibration and your energy levels are higher, and it doesn't allow for you to be subjected to people with lower vibrations, which is a more negative attitude, and a negative way of being. And so that's how one of the best ways to get out of the lower vibration is to have a better self perception, and that will raise your vibration, and those people won't affect you anymore. Am I right, or am I?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And if you don't believe me, anybody that's listening, try it. I promise you, you will start to notice things around you shift. Now, this is where people get a little bit uncomfortable because maybe they're in a toxic relationship or they're around more toxic people, could be friends, whatever. And they start to get a healthy self-perception and feel good about themselves. So they're looking at the world like a little bit brighter, and they're looking at the glass half full instead of half empty. You know, they just have a more optimistic attitude. And then they wonder why some of the people are starting to go the other way.
Yep.
And they get a little nervous because, oh my gosh, so-and-so's not calling me anymore. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen that person in a few days. So-and-so said something to me and that wasn't really very nice. Well, that's because naturally those people are a little uncomfortable. They don't know why. Usually they don't know why, because it's not like you're wearing a sign saying, I only want positive people around, you know? They just feel something is different and they start to slowly veer away. But that's what you're wanting. That's what you want. And sometimes what people will start to do is oh, no, come back. You know, oh, please, no. I'm not saying that you have to like cut those people out of your life. I'm just saying that, you know, sometimes there's a season for people. And sometimes they might start to get a little more positive as well and come back into your life. But if you really want things to start looking a little more joyful, feeling a little more joyful, you got to let some people kind of go away a little bit. And that's where people get a little bit uncomfortable, because even it's like abusive relationships. They know what it's like to be in that relationship. They're nervous about what it's like not to be because it's the unknown. And the same thing seems to happen with this when you start having a healthier self-perception. But I promise you, if you start paying attention to it that way and look around and say, oh my gosh, I actually feel better. Yeah, it might hurt my feelings that so-and-so said something to me that wasn't nice. Usually if they did, it's because they're uncomfortable and they'll say things like, gosh, you've really changed. I don't think we can do anything together anymore. You know, because you're not feeding.
She's getting so stuck up.
Exactly. And you're not feeding into their negativity. So listen, I've been there before too. We've all had people in our lives where when you get together with them, they basically just want to talk about everybody else, or it's drama. That's all they talk about is drama. And they want you to feed into that drama. Now, I'm not saying that you can't, like, you know, have a friend that you're bouncing things off of, and that's different. But you know, those people, they're just toxic. And you get tired of hearing about it because you're going down the same hole they are. And if you don't join in on that toxic conversation, then they're like, what's wrong with you? Do you have anything to say about Susie Q?
Susie, you know? Q is such a bad person, and that.
Yeah. And then you're going right down with them.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is if you look at your life in the totality that it is, if you maintain your good self-perception and keep your energy high, the people who no longer resonate with you will gradually, sometimes quickly, go away. And then what you do in that case is bless them, love them, and let them go. Because what that does is it opens up the space for the right people to come into your life that you didn't even think were available to you.
Nope. People that you probably never have even seen, the situations that you get put in, the opportunities that come your way, all of those things, because you're blocking them. So when somebody's talking to me about things like this and they keep on and on about this person that they were with, and you're just blocking. You still, what you focus on grows, okay? So if you're still talking about that person, that's going to take up all of your space. So like you said, you're not allowing that space. But if you do, just very gently in your mind, even, okay, you know what? That was great. I learned a lot. Now I'm letting it move on. The door's open, and you're right. The people that come into your life, even when I met my husband, like I had just gotten to the point where I remember I was talking to my mom. My grandmother was sick, and we were at the Mayo Clinic, and we were in the back hall. I had worked at the Mayo Clinic for 13 years, and I was sitting there with my mom waiting for my grandmother, and I was just telling my mom that I feel like so good. Like I feel so good. I mean, I was working a full-time job and cleaning houses on the weekends and training women after work. But you know what? I was doing it all myself. And I just felt like on top of the world. So I was like, it's so great, just the kids and I. And then this guy comes walking out and is looking out the window. And we're sitting in the back hall, like I said, and he's looking at the palm trees because he's from the Northwest and lived up north. And basically my mom was talking to him. I won't tell you the whole story, but so then he goes back in and my mom goes, I think he was looking at you. I said, Mom, listen, I just got done telling you that I am so happy with just the kids and I. So then I go downstairs into the employee cafeteria to bring my mom, my grandmother, we're all going in there to eat some lunch after her test. I turn around, guess who's right there? That same guy. That same guy. So long story short, we ended up going out. The first thing I would always tell people, though, when I knew if they were going to ask me out at all, I would always say, I have 2 kids, and I would tell them their ages because you can tell by the look on their face. So usually it never got past that. They were just like, oh,
check, please.
That's nice. That's nice. But anyway, yeah. And we've been together now for 25 years.
Be careful what you wish for and set yourself up for, because great things are going to happen to you. I friggin' promise you.
I promise. We promise.
Exactly. And we'll stand by that, and I'll even write it down. We're talking with Cathlene Miner. You're adorable, by the way. I think the world of you. You're awesome.
Well, thank you. I think you're pretty awesome too.
Well, gee whiz, I'll take that. That's very nice. We need to take a station break, and then we're coming right back with more. And we're going to talk about handbags. We're also going to talk about the work that she is passionate about, which is taking care of children and people in abusive situations. And that's an important piece of work that you got going there, and I really appreciate it. So you're listening to Positive Talk, and we'll be right back after this station break.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We have a fascinating guest with us today, and she is helping me and helping, hopefully, you understand that your self-perception is everything, and that you have the ability and I consider it a responsibility, but you also have the ability to change your life in a meaningful way by just changing how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, and we didn't mention before that I want to mention is the other thing that you'll start to notice if you have children is your children start to change. Because they're watching. They're watching what you're doing, whether it's positive or negative, or when you're talking to somebody and all you're doing is gossiping about people. I mean, they are listening, they're watching, and they're learning. So when you have a healthy self-perception, they start to carry that and have the half glass full.
And therefore, you can change the 7-generation cycle. And
Yep.
if you don't know what I mean by generation cycle, is that we tend to, as a family group, go from generation to generation to generation doing the same things because this is what we know. This is what we're being taught. This is what we see. And you're
Mhm.
exactly right. And when you change that, everything changes. And so their kids are not going to feel that way because they're going to see something completely different, which is cool.
It really is. And for me, with having two older kids and two younger kids, right? So my kids now are 32, 29, 20, and 18. So when they were younger, and I have 3 grandkids, but when they were younger, I could tell a difference that my 2 older kids, the ones when I was a single mom and still figuring myself out, right? Because those of us that do this early are growing up with them. I had to really teach them more of a self-perception, a healthy self-perception as they got older, because I noticed that my younger kids, since I had already taken that on myself, because I didn't have the 2 younger ones until I was in my early 30s, that's what they grew up with. So they didn't know the difference. That's just what they saw. That's what they saw from me. That's the way I talked. And when my older kids were younger, I mean, I was barely making ends meet. There were times I would just go home and cry. I was going through a divorce. I mean, life was so different. So my self-perception was not that great, but I did have to teach them. I had to really start to help them change their own mindset.
You know what I like about what you just said? Is you just said, "My life was different." You didn't
Mhm,
say, "Oh, my life really sucked, and this was that, and this guy was
mhm.
that."
Yeah.
It was different, but you maintained it within yourself to have the ability to change it, and that's what your work has been all about, and now you're working with children and with teens and with, abused people. Tell us
Mhm.
about your work and how you got into that.
Okay. So when I was growing up, my parents were amazing. They still are. I would just have to say this. My mom was 15 when she had me. My dad was 17. They're still together. I honestly, they're the most amazing humans I've ever met. And I think that's too why when I was in a relationship that I didn't think that was that great, when you asked before about, the people and the men that you're around, like my dad's an awesome guy. I knew that there was there was a difference between the relationship that I was in and what was out there. But so we lived across the street from my grandparents when I was younger and figured out why as I got a little bit older. But my mom grew up in a very abusive home. So my grandfather not only abused my grandmother, but all of the children.
Oh.
And my mom had siblings that were mine and my sister's age. So I have one sister, she's 15 months younger than me. And so her siblings would run across the street and say, Debbie, you've got to come over, and so then the younger siblings would come and we would just wait there at the fence and we knew what was going on. And I knew that I didn't live that way across the street. So I knew this was not normal, but then figured out, that's why we lived there. My mom wanted to make sure that she could help protect anybody else that was still in the house. And my grandmother stayed. I never understood why my grandmother stayed. It stuck with me really for my whole life. And unfortunately, she passed away about 35 years ago, fairly young age. And I just think you can only get hit so many times.
Mhm.
Then I went and got certified to be a domestic abuse advocate because I still had that lingering in my head. So I did that in 2016 after raising most of my kids because I wanted to know, why do people stay? I still don't understand why they're staying. And what I found out was that there's no one reason, and it's all about power and control. The abuser wants power and control over the survivors, which we call the person that's being abused. And that's really all it's about. They want control and they usually get it. Well, they do, because the person stays in the relationship. And the person is literally, as my mom puts it, brainwashed. They're brainwashed. So they know, they start to believe what that abuser is saying and doing. So within Hopefull Handbags, how I started it was my grandmother always loved her handbag. So even if she'd leave my grandfather for a little bit of time or whatever, she always had that handbag and she'd have it right next to her. And after a while, they didn't have any money left because he had spent it all. So I remember going to J.C. Penney's. We would go like twice a year, and my mom would have her pick out another handbag. So I started collecting handbags. And I had heard of people collecting handbags that were once loved and putting sanitary products in them and handing them out in some of the other countries on the streets to the homeless women. But I wanted to fill these with necessities. So we started filling them with necessities, and I just put a post out on Facebook. And like a couple of days later, I had people calling me that were in my area saying, where can I drop off these handbags? So then we started donating them to the domestic abuse shelters. Within there, we have necessities, we have an uplifting note, and also a tag. So the tag is so that they can also give it to other people so they can contact us. Now, from there, we just started to grow. There's a lot of needs. There's a lot of needs out there. And that's when we started helping them with other things when we would get monetary donations, because number one is safety. We've got to get them to safety. Number two is health and well-being. And then we've got to get long-term sustainability. Without long-term sustainability, they go back, or they get back into those same types of cycles and relationships. So within our base program, when we talk about self-perception, that's the base of what we do. We start talking about that right away. And the other, because you either go into a domestic abuse situation with an unhealthy self-perception, or you come out with one. You don't come out feeling, you might have a little bit of weight off your shoulders, but that's it. You feel really, really down about yourself. And you don't have to be in an abusive situation to feel bad about yourself, because we all as humans have a low self-perception as we get older if we don't take care of it. But so we're helping these people start to get their footing again, feel good about themselves, and be able to move on. Another thing that I really pride ourselves on is we don't look back. Now, we do have BetterHelp, so we have counseling available. If they need to dig into the future or past a little bit, they will. We like to look towards the future. So what is your biggest dreams? What would you do if you could do absolutely anything? Because these people have not thought about that for so long. And another thing is, you'll see on our website, we never use the word violence. We use the word domestic abuse, because it's not just physical. There's psychological, emotional, financial, and of course there's physical. But so many of the survivors have told me, the physical abuse, I could get over. I could heal from it. But this psychological and mental abuse is really what took the toll on me.
I interviewed a gal just the other day who was in a relationship. She's written a book, and I highly recommend that book. I forget the title right now, but you can go back into the archives.
I will.
And she was part of a narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, that's like psychological.
Yeah, but then it turned into physical.
Yep.
And it became, but she was in that relationship for 25 years.
Yes.
And she finally got out of it, and she understands why now. But to put up with that abuse, and we're talking about throwing knives at her and shooting a gun in the house in her direction, and taking money from her and moving them away from all of her friends and family, telling the neighbors that my wife is nuts. You don't better not come over here because she's crazy, and to isolate her into it's horrible what these people do.
And they stay because they are so literally and figuratively beaten down that they believe that it's their fault.
Yes.
Yeah. And it takes a lot to get somebody out of that.
It does. And this person, I can't pronounce her first name, but she says hi. So I just wanted, I'd put that up there. But it does take a lot. Now, how did you get, I know that it was because of your family situation and stuff, but I was looking at your website. You have got a lot of volunteers that are giving their time, and you're also multi-company. You're worldwide.
We are. So we're a global organization now. And what we do is we have 3 pillars. So the first one is what we're talking about with the handbags. Within that, we have 2 programs, Shine and New Program, and those are acronyms. Safety, habits, which we all have to change our habits. That goes along with the self-perception. Independence, a new way of living, and empowerment. And then the new program, Navigating Employment Wins, goes within that because we have to find them a job. So that's pillar number 1. Number 2 is self-defense. So we feel very passionate about self-defense, not just for survivors, but for everyone. Everybody needs to know self-defense. So we have 2 main self-defense instructors. One is in the Caribbean. His name is Master Stinger Robinson. He is absolutely amazing. He's in his 50s. If you look at him, I'm just going to say he looks like he's about 30 with his muscle tone. Honestly, I mean, really. But he's been in martial arts for over 40 years. So I'm bringing this up because he trains men and women. And then we have our women's self-defense instructor who is in the United Kingdom. And she has the women's only self-defense business and training center in the United Kingdom. So and I'm passionate about self-defense too. I used to teach kickboxing. Like, I am really into that. But what I want to say is that we offer these, and we also offer certifications. So like if a trainer wants to learn how to teach women and children self-defense, we have the ability to certify them to do that, to go out into the world and teach other people. So that's our second pillar. Our third one is our special project. And our special project for the past 2 years has been Kenya. And let me tell you how this relates. So we started helping some survivors of domestic and child abuse in Kenya. Again, long-term sustainability. We have to have long-term sustainability, which is different in every country, especially third world countries. So I said, what is it that you could help your community with that we could try to brainstorm around and figure out how we can come up with some long-term sustainability for you while you're helping your community? And it was an astounding water. They said, water. We have to have water. We have no water. So it's in the rural areas of Kenya in the Rift Valley. And so, okay, let's think about this. And so we came up with water tanks. So we are on our 12th water tank, actually 13th. And what we do is we install water harvesting systems, and they're 10,000 liter tanks. So these things are huge, as high as your ceiling. And we have a gutter system. We have it going. It's so awesome. You got to watch some of this stuff. So what we do is we employ our survivors. They're the ones that run this project from the beginning to the end. So there's their long-term sustainability. But not only that, they are also teaching trades to the community. So the community is learning how to put water tanks in, how to plumb things, how to put in toilets. And these kids, all of the schools that we have put these in, we have not had any more waterborne illnesses. So the kids were dying from waterborne illnesses. And the reason is they're getting, they're still fetching their water with pails and having to bring it to school from lakes that don't move, streams that are toxic. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff 3 years ago, like none of it. And I've really had to do a whole lot of just learning, and I find it fascinating. And what we do, just so that everybody knows, within Hopefull Handbags, anything that's donated, whether it's monetary or in-kind donations, like the handbags and the necessities that you donate, stays within the area that they're donated in. Within that area, or possibly a surrounding county if it's a lower income county. So that is what we do. So any money that's given for special projects, it's given for that project. So people know when they're donating money to a water tank.
That's huge. That's huge.
It really is.
Because a lot of, and I hate to say it, but there are a lot of really, really, really fine charities out there. But there are also some of them that are in a money-making situation,
Mhm.
and the money doesn't get to where they say it goes.
Right. And I can promise you right now, we are 100% volunteer. Nobody makes any money at this charity and organization. The only people that are making anything is our labor workers who are Kenyan community members that work on that particular job, but the money is in and labeled within the budget. So people know exactly where it's going. So it cost us 2,000 US dollars to do an entire water tank for an entire school and community, and it will last about 20 years.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
a friend of mine who was from Kenya. He was a
Mhm.
fellow bus driver, and he was the son of the chief of a village. And I said, that must have been a pretty affluent thing. And he said, it was, except for they had to walk 6 miles for water. 6
Yeah.
miles
No joke.
for
Yes.
for water, and the water wasn't really great quality, which is why kids got sick. We need to take a quick break. Cathlene Miner, you are a sensational human being, and I want to thank you for your service, because water, you're right, water can change everything if everybody has access to clean. It'd be nice if everybody in the United States had access to clean water, but that's
It would be. We can teach them how to put a rainwater harvesting tank in.
there. There you go. You're listening to Positive Talk, and we're going to be right back with our last segment right after this. Listen to this commercial. It's kind of important.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And I got to tell you, we're talking with Cathlene Miner. She is so much, and she does so much. 4.2 million homeless kids or trafficked kids
Yep.
in the United States of
Yes.
America.
That's a problem.
It is shocking.
It is a problem. And, you know, we work closely with some human trafficking organizations as well. So I'm pretty familiar, unfortunately, with those things. And it's related to domestic abuse and some of the kids that they're either, you know, they're taken away from the home, they run away from home. There's so many things that end up happening to those kids. So they're among that 4.2 million. And that's what we want to prevent. So we always say, you know, the more adults we can get to safety, the fewer kids that have to grow up in these abusive homes. There's reasons why those kids end up on the street or being trafficked. And on the side of that, I want to just say, some of those kids are being trafficked and they didn't come from bad families. They actually came from really good families. And they just either started talking to somebody or, I mean, you know, some of them were taken, but then you've got some that just sort of gradually are groomed, you know, and you know, we're talking about adolescence here a lot of times, which is the most vulnerable time for these kids. And unfortunately, you see what happens in the United States when they're trying to, I really feel about this. You know, they try to brainwash our kids about all kinds of stuff because that's the age to do it. So you can see how somebody who's trying to, you know, human traffic somebody could do it, unfortunately, if they entice them with the right stuff.
Just a real quick story. Somebody I interviewed, you know, I'm so lucky. I get to interview so many people about so many different things. But she was telling me she was trafficked, and she told me that she had to leave home because it was a domestic violence situation and she couldn't stay there for her own well-being. And she was working at a fast food place and was living in her car. And these couple of girls her age came up to her and told her, you can come live with us and you can have a whole different lifestyle, and it will be better, and we take care of each other and stuff like that. And so she decided that rather than live in her car, she would go do that. She ended up in a brothel.
Mm-hmm.
And all these girls were either on purpose or either because they wanted it doesn't matter. They were all prostitutes, and they were all it was run by a guy.
Yep.
And they would get fed and stuff, but they were expected to do what they were expected to do. And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was in the United States of America. It could be happening down the street from you, and you wouldn't even know it.
No, you wouldn't. And I unfortunately I've called the authorities a few times on some things I've seen through the years. And I think that's where we have to not be afraid. If we think something is not right, we have to open our mouth, because you know what? Hopefully we're not right.
Yeah.
But what if we are? You've got to help save these kids. And, we've got to trust our intuition, our gut, whatever you want to call it. Just keep your eyes open.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, we've been talking with Cathlene Miner. Will you come back? Well, there's so much more that I would like to talk to you about.
There is so much more that we could talk about, and I absolutely will, because I just love you and your show. And like I said, I always know when I hear your voice, and I'm going to leave this feeling better than I did when I started, even if I felt pretty darn good, which is always nice. But, we all do have to take time to work on ourselves. And it's really hard in the midst of everyday life when you get really busy to say, oh, you know what? Ask yourself that question. What do I think of myself? Write it down. Even if it's bad, write it down, because you got to know where you're starting. I always like to talk about that, like the GPS, right? We got to know where we're going, so we know what we got to work with. So, write it down. And, I just want to mention this too real quick with water. Like you said about everybody needs water. And one of the moms just said it's so plain and nice, whereas water is life, and you are giving our kids life. And it is so true. And, in the United States, obviously I'm a US citizen. I am a huge United States fan. I have a flag in the front and a flag in the back. I am full on. And I do see the things that are happening in the United States. And I think if we can all start to put out a little more positive vibrations and energies by feeling better about ourselves, imagine the ripple effect that's going to have in the world. I mean, it has to. It has to. So we're doing ourselves a favor, but you mentioned this earlier, you're doing everybody else a favor too. I mean, literally the whole world. Let's start with our surroundings.
If we work to eliminate the hate, division, and fear that in some cases has permeated our society, and replace it with, we are going to take care of each other because we are all one, we are all we're all the same, and we're going to work to help each other raise our vibration and treat each other with more respect and caring and love, I think we could change the world.
I know we could. Because everybody, listen. Start working on what you think and feel about yourself. If you're up for getting the book, go ahead and do it. It's a 30-day self-perception makeover. But even just ask yourself the question. Start looking around as you start to do that and notice the changes. Imagine what it would be like if everybody did that, just like you said, Kevin.
I want to thank Cathlene Miner for being here. Go to her website, CathleneMiner.com. Donate to the handbag charity, and you can create a place where kids, and you'll never know them, you'll never get a chance to see them, but they'll have water for the first time in their entire life, and it may cause somebody to live and not die.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you again for being here. You are simply awesome. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We are a production of KMmedia.pro. a full-service media company. Whether it is audio, video, shorts, or longer pieces, we're able to take each project from beginning to final product within your time frame and on budget. Visit kmmedia.pro for more details about us and to get started on your project. We also would like to thank the Brushwood Media Network for all their support. Go to brushwoodmedianetwork.com to find out more about them and the quality shows featured on the network. Until then, we'll see you next time. My name again is Kevin McDonald, and please remember, be kind to one another.